I think it's very very clear and understood by now that today we're going to be talking everything and anything around resume building. Resume building is something which is a very significant, I would say, part of any student's life or even any working professional's life, because at some or the other point in your life, I am sure you will be indulged in building a resume for yourself. Now, today, although I cannot like directly interact with a lot of you, I'm sure that people who are watching it do understand that a lot of times we confuse a resume to be the same thing as a CV, and we use them very, as synonyms for each other or interchangeably. I'll start my session on the note of first breaking it down to you as to what this myth actually is, and I would like to bust it for you. I'll start sharing my screen, and I have a presentation, like a slide deck, prepared for you, which could, just support what we're going to go on to. But to give you a brief, I'm going to cover everything about resume building, and we're also going to talk a bit about video resumes, because I think it's important to talk about it given that we are in the digital era. So I'll start sharing my screen, and probably Nikhil could just give me a heads up if he is able to see it. Give me a moment. Let me just go full screen with the presentation. As discussed and already, made very clear, we're here for a resume building sort of session or a workshop. And the first thing that I want to break down to you is that a resume and a CV are two very different things, right? And they're not words that you can use interchangeably. Now, let's talk about a few differences between the two so that we can lay the foundation for this session and then go ahead and understand things. Now, the key points which you need to keep in mind when you are differentiating a resume from a CV is, the first thing is the purpose for which these documents are used. A resume is used as a piece of paper which you submit to an organization or a company whenever you're applying for a job. The job could be with an MNC, the job could be with a startup, it could be with an agency, it could be anywhere. But every time you're applying to a job role, you submit a resume. When you talk about a CV, it basically comes into picture when you are to be elaborating on things a little more than required, which is generally in cases when, let's say, you want to pursue a PhD and you want to go abroad. So that's when you will submit a CV. Or let's say you want to apply for a master's or an MBA, that is when you will generally use a CV. However, the extension of a resume and making it into a CV is very simple, and I'll be talking about that. But yes, there are certain differences, like I mentioned. So if anything related to the academia field is there, right? So let's say when you're applying for a master's, MBA, PhD, or you are a professor by profession and you are applying to a university or a college, you use a CV. Second thing is, what do you highlight on? So these two documents essentially contain the same number of sections and the same section headings as well, most of the times. But what you highlight on varies. So a resume will highlight more on your work experience and your skills. Whatever skills you possess, whatever work experience you have is what you will highlight more in the resume, because the purpose is to land a job, right? Similarly, when you talk about a CV, the focus is more on your grades. The focus is more on your extracurricular activities, on your volunteering activities, on the research work that you've done, because this is exactly what the universities want to see. This is what a probable school may want to see. So depending on the purpose, right, of the document is what you highlight. So you'll highlight more on your academic grades, on your extracurricular, your research work, and any kind of projects more in the CV. The third difference is something which a lot of people talk about, which is the length, right? It's always a debatable topic. How long should your resume be? How long should your CV be? We hear a lot about it. Now, based on on my experience of helping a lot of people with it personally, one thing that I can tell you for sure is that it's always better to have a short and a crisp resume of which is a one-pager resume. If you come with under 10 years of experience, I'll repeat myself again. If you come with under 10 years of experience, having a resume which is one page long is perfectly fine, and that is what you should aim to do. However, if it tends to go beyond the one page, you can go up to a maximum of 2 pages, and you should never go beyond 2 pages, because that's when you kind of convert it into a CV. So don't do that. And especially when you're a fresher right out of college, whether it's an MBA or an undergraduate degree that you're doing, I can tell you this, that I had done 25 internships myself, and I know for a fact if I could condense everything and put it in one page, anybody can, right? You can put it in one page. It's just about understanding what needs to be highlighted, what needs to be discarded. That's the rule you need to follow. When you talk about a CV can range anywhere between 3 to 6 pages, right? You get the opportunity to not restrict yourself into a page. You can go on and give further details of things. However, the moment it goes beyond like 6 pages, it becomes a bio data. So don't go down that route. A bio data will consist of unnecessary information which is not required either in the resume or in the CV, which is something like your marital status, your gender, your birth date, your entire address. These are things no one wants to know when you submit a resume or a CV. So a bio data is a completely different document. We won't get into that. Another one thing that I'd like to highlight on is a declaration, right? A lot of people feel that a declaration is needed in a resume or in a CV. It's not needed in either of the documents. But yes, when you talk about a CV, because you're applying for academic purposes, having a references section will always help, right? Because a reference of a professor or a manager from your previous internship or your previous boss, just their title, their job title or their job role, their name and their phone number in the references section would really help them contact them and get their background check done and everything. That does not apply in a resume. You don't really need references section in the resume as such. So those are a few differences. And on that note, now that we've understood what a resume is and what a CV is, now we can probably, dig deep into resume building and understanding the different aspects of it. So let's try and understand what are the different types of resumes that exist in the market currently. The first one is called a chronological resume. Just like the name suggests to you, a chronological resume is one wherein you put all your educational details or your project details or experience details in a reverse chronological order, which is you go from your most recent experience, which you are in right now or which you were in very recently, to the one which you did at the earliest, right? So let's say you did a probable internship in 2020 and you did another internship in 2018. So you would put the 2021 first and the 2018 one next. The same thing is what you follow for education and for projects. That's a chronological resume. When you talk about functional resume, the focus is more on your skills and your work experience. You don't really bother about the dates or the sequence or the order in which the events or your experiences took place, but you focus more on the skills. So even if you did an internship in 2018 and you felt that you really learned a lot more in that internship than the one you did in 2020, you put it up first because you want to focus more on your contribution in that internship and the impact it had on your learning, and you don't care about the dates. That's a functional resume. When you combine the features of both a chronological and a functional resume, it's called a combinational resume. You also call it a hybrid resume nowadays. So when you talk about a hybrid resume, what happens is you have everything in order, right, in the reverse chronological order. At the same time, you are focusing more on the skills and the work experience. So you're elaborating everything in detail and you're giving the right set of information to the recruiter. Now, when you talk about the fourth type, it's a targeted resume. Just like the name suggests, a targeted resume is tailor made and it's specific. So it's customized for the particular job roles that you apply to. Every company has got a job description that they roll out for the particular job. And an ideal scenario is when you read the job description very well, understand what is expected out of you as a candidate, map it with your current skills and your expertise, and only then you apply. And when you apply, you target or you custom make your resume to that job role so that it aligns with all the requirements of that job role. And that is what you should ideally be doing for all kinds of jobs. When you ask me personally what is the most recommended format or the type of resume, I would say that a combinational resume, which we spoke about, plus a targeted resume. When you have an amalgamation of the features of both a combinational and a targeted resume, I think it's the best blend that you can have in a resume. When you talk about a mini resume, it's actually something which goes complementary with a resume. It's your cover letters, which we talk about even when you're applying for jobs. 95% of the times, the companies would not require you to submit a cover letter. It's not a compulsory thing. However, to stand out from the crowd, it's always recommended to send out a cover letter in addition to your resume. So the mini resume is basically your cover letter. When you talk about a non-traditional resume, which we're going to talk about towards the end of the session, which is your unconventional resume type, which is your video resume, it is something which has started gaining momentum very recently, especially in India. And the reason that it has become a topic of conversation is because it's a very interactive form of a resume, and you don't just judge a person based on a piece of paper. You get to interact with them in some form or sorts, right? So we'll be getting into the details of it very soon, but it is for sure the right way to grab the attention of the recruiters. You can never get a a surety that if you submit a video resume, you're going to get selected. But what I can surely tell you is when you're submitting a video resume, you shine through the thousands of other applicants, because trust me, very few people are doing this. And if you're doing it, you're doing something right. Now that we know what are the different types of resumes, I'd just like to lay the emphasis on the importance of a resume, because today we are in an age where everything is digitally accessible. We've got LinkedIn, we've got video resumes kicking in, and a lot of people feel that maybe the importance of a resume is going to get diluted over the years, or resumes will become insignificant and will get discarded. We hear a lot about this in the news as well. We read a lot of articles. Now, here are my 2 cents in this. As long as up till date, at least, even if I talk about the scenario right now in July 2021, if you want to apply to any job in general, or people want to understand more about you, they'll always ask you for a resume, whether it is in India or it is abroad. No matter which country you are in, your resume is that document which recruiters use in order to map your skills to the requirement and to make an analysis whether you should be called for an interview. And number two, I'd like to lay emphasis on another thing, that you may have to also send video resumes, or more emphasis may also be given to your digital presence, a digital footprint on other social media platforms like LinkedIn. But according to me, resumes are going nowhere for the next 5 to 10 years, at least. They may become obsolete later on, but they are here to stay, because ultimately it's a summary of your qualifications and your key strengths and your skills. It obviously outlines all the experience that you have had so far as a student, and even going beyond as a working professional. And as I said, any job opening, Amazon puts out a job opening today for a data analyst role, no matter where it is putting it up. You have to go through the job description and submit your resume, and only when you submit your resume can you even expect a call back. So let's live in the present and understand that as of now they are required and they're important, and let's try to build a very bankable one, and a resume which is compatible with the ATS, which we're going to talk about very shortly. The last point, it obviously helps you land an interview in your dream company. So yes, the resumes are still relevant and important in today's day and age as well. The most important topic of discussion today, which I feel, at least for me, is going to be about the applicant tracking system. Now, this is something a lot of people talk about. They use it as a jargon nowadays, but very few people really know what it is and why it is so significant today. Now, as the name suggests, the ATS stands for an applicant tracking system. It's a robot or a bot or a software of sorts which works on certain parameters and algorithms which are fed into it. So it works on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and it's got certain parameters which are fed into it based on which it works, right? So, for example, when you submit your resume today, if you are under the impression that it's a recruiter who gets a first look at your resume, unfortunately, it is not. It is the ATS which actually scans your resume and then makes a decision, informed decision, whether it wants to accept or reject your resume in 6 seconds. 98% of your Fortune 500 global companies use an applicant tracking system today, all across the globe, right? That means approximately every company uses it. Startups nowadays have started building their inbuilt applicant tracking systems, in-house applicant tracking systems, to track the applications from various applicants all across the globe. That being said, it is clear that if you want to make it through your dream companies, one thing you need to make it through is the ATS. Only then do the cream resumes get shortlisted, and they go to the recruiters, and they further then shortlist the filtered candidate, and then you land an interview. That's the process. Now, an ATS has certain parameters, let's say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? There are some A, B, C, D, E, F, G parameters which are fed into it. Now, based on those parameters, an ATS gives a score to your resume. There is a ranking or a score which is given to your resume based on various parameters. The parameters are generally around how compliant your resume is with the applicant tracking system, in terms of the format, in terms of the information, in terms of the keywords which are there in your resume, which you've picked from the job description, in terms of the kind of text friendliness or the readability of your resume, in terms of the spacing, indentation, and everything that you can think of, right? So your resume is judged on various grounds, and then you're given a score. So every parameter will have a score out of, let's say, 10 or 20, etc. And ultimately you'll be given a score out of 100, right? So out of 100, let's say your resume gets a score of 70, and the cutoff for that particular company is 60. So you make it through, right? Because you got a 70, you cross the cutoff, the ATS will pass your resume, it will go to the recruiter. Even if you land a 59 and the cutoff is 60, unfortunately, you won't be able to make it through the ATS, because the ATS is not human enough to understand your capabilities or your skill set as much as a recruiter would understand. So you either make it or you break it through the ATS, and that's why it's extremely important that we make our applicant tracking systems very compliant today. Now, two of the most widely used and globally used applicant tracking systems are Taleo and Workday. So it's Taleo. Taleo is one of the platforms which a lot of global firms use. Whenever you'll apply on their official websites, or you'll go to, let's say, LinkedIn Easy Apply, or a Naukri, or an imjobs.com, or any other recruiting platform, even globally, the place, or the, I would say, section when you're applying for a job, and you land onto the screen where you have to enter your personal information or you have to attach your resume file, is called the applicant tracking system. That exactly is the applicant tracking system. Workday is another, applicant tracking system. Workday. There are many others, but these are used very, very widely by very renowned institutions and companies as well. Now, as I told you, that some of the companies are also having their own inbuilt ATS systems. So one thing I'd like to tell you for sure is that there is nobody on the planet that can know exactly what are the parameters on which you're being judged. However, because of the influx and the overload of information and recruiters being generous enough to let us know some of the things about applicant tracking systems, since they've come into the picture in the past just 7 to 8 years, it's not been very long, we do know certain things. And career coaches, or let's say LinkedIn experts, or resume experts, know for a fact that these are certain things which will help you sail through and stand out, and at least make it through the ATS. So let's try and understand how can you actually make your ATS, make your resume ATS compliant once that we've understood what is an ATS. So, how do you really beat the ATS? The first thing that you need to keep in mind is you need to make your resume compatible with the ATS file type accepted. This may seem like a point which is very, very trivial, which is very silly, but the fact, being said, that we tend to make these mistakes when we're in the application process. I've seen a lot of my mentees do it themselves, and I wouldn't want anybody to get rejected just on the basis of the document type. And that happens. Forget even making it through the ATS. If your file type is not compatible, you just cannot, even get into the ATS system to get scanned, for your resume to get scanned. So whenever we apply to any of these portals and when you attach your resume, you've got an asterisk mark, which says, or which tells you the compatible file types, whether it's .txt, whether it's .pdf, .word, .docx, whatever it is, right? Now 99% of the applicant tracking systems will accept .pdf as the most compatible file type. However, there are certain ATSs which do not accept PDF and only accept Word documents as well. The easiest way to find that out is, like I told you, when you are uploading it, you get to know the acceptable file types. Please be very vigilant when you're uploading it. Now, one thing that I'd like you all to know is that ultimately, when you submit your resume on any portal all across the globe, if it is going through an ATS, it's getting converted to a plain text file, to a .txt file. So one thing you need to again keep into mind is that make your resume as neat, decent, and professional as possible, and not very colorful or not very aesthetically pleasing or beautiful. A lot of people are under the rock thinking that the more beautiful looking my resume is, the more my chances of selection are. Unfortunately, that's not the case unless you're applying to a very, very creative role like that of a content creator, a graphic designer, a fashion designer, a video editor, where I need to visually see your skills and creativity. When you're applying to a normal, let's say an MNC role or a corporate role, everyone all across the globe accepts your resume, expect your resume to be very text friendly, because that is what the ATS also accepts. They want it to be neat and just professional as possible. So the fourth point, which I'd like to skip to since I'm talking about this, is that is what it emphasizes on. Don't use any infographics, fancy templates, images, and charts. So anything such as your own pictures as well, or any kind of pie charts, bar graphs that you use to highlight your skills, because a lot of these online platforms, when they ask you to make your resume template, unfortunately 95% of the times they are not ATS compliant, and that is why I never recommend my clients or anybody to go for these online platforms to make your resumes. Always make your resume from scratch on Google Docs or on Word, Microsoft Word. I will be showing you a sample template as well, so that would give you a better understanding of what I'm mentioning. But always keep your resume free from any kind of images, charts, and icons, because those get discarded by the ATS on the go. And ATS is only text friendly. The second point, which I'll come to, is highlighting your resume by using optimized keywords. Now, a lot of people feel that if I just read a job description, I pick up the keywords and I stuff it into my resume, I'll make it through the ATS. Well, if it was that easy, every other candidate would be getting shortlisted. But that's not the case. Majority of the people are complaining about the fact that I possess the right skills, I have the right experience, but I'm not getting calls from the companies. That is what I hear most of my clients telling me. Now, the major reason, or a critical reason that might be happening, is because your resume is not portraying what it needs to portray, or you're not able to articulate the kind of experience you hold, and that is what most of the people struggle with. Now, when you look at any job description, and they've got certain points mentioned that this is what we expect a candidate to be proficient in, this is what we want them to do. One thing you need to keep in mind is that uh, there will be a lot of keywords which will be there in the resume, but you don't actually possess them. For example, if you're applying for the role of a software development engineer and they say that we for sure need somebody to have expertise in Java, right? And it could be that you don't have expertise in Java. Would you still put that keyword in your resume? No, you won't, because you don't possess it, and we're not lying on our resume. One golden rule is to never lie on your resume. And second thing is, just because a keyword is there in the job description, it may not always be there onto your resume, because no job description can match your profile 100%. None. It's never possible. You have to find a JD or a job role where 90% of your skills at least match, and then you apply to those roles. So one thing you need to be sure is, make a list of keywords from the job description which apply to you and are present in the job description, and a few keywords which are there in the job description but don't apply to you, right? And then the task is very simple. The words which are there in the category which apply to you and are there in the job description, they are the words which you're going to use in your resume. Now, where do you really use them is when you're describing your skills, when you're describing or elaborating on your job experiences or your internship experiences or your industrial trainings, because you'll be explaining your role, right? So when you're explaining your role, you could plug in those keywords very, very efficiently. Or when you're describing your projects, right? So that is how you optimize your resume with keywords, and that is how you actually also update your resume for every job role that you're applying to. A lot of people also feel that, do we need to build a new resume from scratch when you're applying to every job? No, that's not the case. You don't have to build a resume from scratch every time you apply to a job. Build one good resume with the framework, which is in place and is, like, industry relevant. After which, all you need to do is read your job description very well, and just customize it according to the job role and tailor make it with the keywords and anything important which is there in their JD. That's it. That's all that you need to do. The third point says, avoid mentioning important information in the header and the footer. Again, when we talk about online templates, anywhere you go to CV Maker, you go to Resume Builder, you go to you know so many other online template or resume template making platforms, they'll give you a placeholder for your personal information, which is your email address, your phone number, your LinkedIn profile link, and all of that right at the top of the resume. Most of the times, 99% of the time, or at the bottom. I think that is not a good practice, because if you want to be on the safe side, it's better to have a separate section for your personal information, because your applicant tracking system does not really scan the information right at the top or at the bottom very well. I'm not saying that it would be a basis of rejection, but as a best practice, why not abide by things which are going to keep you on the safer side? So having a separate section for your personal information is what I recommend. The last thing that I'd like you to keep in mind is, always use a very, very simple template and incorporate bullet points wherever you can. Because ATS finds it very difficult to read through huge, paragraphs of text. It finds it very difficult to skim through it, because what it does is it parses through your resume horizontally, right? So this is the movement that your resume has, and it goes horizontally. And when you have got a lot of text, what happens is it becomes difficult for it to pick up the keywords. So use bullet points which are one line long, and which are not very difficult to skim through. Also, avoid using column divided resumes, which is where you have three sections here and three sections here, because again, like I told you, the movement is horizontal, and then it gets a space, it gets a break, and it gets elements in the middle. So the ATS will again face difficulties in scanning through your resume. Whereas when you have a horizontally divided resume, it's smooth and seamless for the ATS to scan through your resume. So these are a few short tips that you can use in order to make your resume applicant tracking system compliant. And this is something which is very, very critical in today's day and age. No matter whether you're applying for a job in India, outside of India, in the US, in the UK, Australia, anywhere, because ATSs are being used everywhere, and the parameters are also more or less the same. And this is what everyone is expecting. I have this template that I like to quickly show you. I have this in which a lot of people use. my students also use, which could really give you a better perspective working. So I just show that to you so that you have an understanding of whatever it is that I've covered up till now. And just zoom in probably. This is good. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. I'll just zoom in. This is a template that is, built, which I genuinely feel is one of the most ATS combined resume templates that you can build for yourself. Just like I told you, the heading should only contain your name. I don't have any personal information of any sorts mentioned here, right? Like my phone number or anything. You will see it, in the later half of the resume that I have a separate section for it. You start with an experience or a work experience section. For students, you can include your internships and industrial trainings here. All your voluntary work or work that you've done with clubs, chapters, societies in your college cannot come here because that will be considered under your achievement section. It will not come as a work experience. Only internships and industrial trainings or freelance work comes here. If you're a working professional, all your jobs will come here, right? You'll have obviously the name of the organization, your current role, and your duration that you were there. And then you have bullet points explaining your role there. Now, the major problem is how to frame these bullet points. People struggle with articulating these bullet points and explaining their role, right? Even as an intern or as a employee. Now I'll give you these two tips that you need to keep in mind is always use power words or action words to start your sentence with, right? Now power words or action words are words ending in ed, words like managed, developed, designed, applied, overlooked, spearheaded, collaborated. These are all words which end in ed, and they show what impact have you left on the organization and not vice versa. Different companies will have an impact on your profile, right? When you add like a company like Google onto your profile, obviously it adds on to your resume. But how did you add on to the company is what the recruiter wants to know. So when you're trying to describe your impact on the organization, these power words or action words display how did you contribute to the organization. So always use power words ending in ed to begin your sentences. And the second thing is use data to back up your role always. By data, I'm talking about numbers which quantify your achievements. Your achievements should always be backed up by data. They shouldn't be generic. When I talk about someone in the sales role, right? So let's say you're applying for a sales role in a company and you write a bullet point about your previous internship saying that you were responsible for generating sales for the organization and taking care of the marketing campaigns both online and offline. For example, it's a sales and marketing role. This is a very very generic description of what you were doing. Trust me, every second person will be writing the same sentence twisted and turned and implying the same thing. How are you standing out from the crowd? The same thing can be turned and twisted this way. When I tell you that as a sales and marketing intern, I was responsible for generating sales worth rupees 10,000 every month, which directly increased the revenue of the organization by 10%, right? Every month. This same point, and I was responsible for handling campaigns, 10 plus campaigns for different brands, both online and offline. The same sentence, when given numbers, when given more quantification, when backed up with realistic data, becomes customized and personalized to you. It cannot be copied or it cannot be replicated by any other person or individual on earth because that is what you have achieved. So your achievements should be quantifiable in a sense. I do understand that sometimes they cannot be quantified, and I'm not telling you to do it for the sake of it. But if you can, there is nothing like it. The moment human beings and recruiters see numbers, they understand the impact you created. Your profile becomes more credible and more trustable, right? If I tell you I'm a career coach and I come with 1 year of experience of training a lot of students, cool, it's okay, it's fine. It leaves some kind of impact. The moment I tell you that I'm a career coach and I've been training students and working professionals since the past 1 year and I've been able to impact over 1,000 plus individuals in the past 6 months, gives you quantification, leaves an impact because I've been able to impact 1,000 people in less than 6 months. Or when I tell you I've given 100 plus talks or done 25 plus internships and I just tell you I've done internships, that is the place where you create an impact. And no matter whether you're a student who is doing their postgraduate degree, or you're doing an undergraduate degree, or you're a working professional, the moment you bring in numbers, you use power words, action words, and you discard all your generic day-to-day routine points, right? Like saying that you were responsible for making reports or you were responsible for attending meetings. The recruiter does not want to know this. The recruiter wants to know how you created an impact. What softwares were you working on? How did you impact their client? Did you bring in some revenue? Did you cut down on costs? Did you bring in or increase the efficiency of the team? What kind of teams were you working in? Were you working across different departments, across different geographies? These are the things companies want to know. The moment you're able to identify what needs to be highlighted and what needs to be discarded, half the battle is won in resume building. Second thing to understand is not everything needs to be put on a resume. Some things have to be left for the recruiter to ask you in the interview. If everything is going to be put on a resume, what are you going to leave the interviewer to ask you in the interview, right? So don't go too much into detail. Don't go too less into detail. Also, maintain a fine balance. One-liners, highlighting, and just intriguing the recruiter are enough. You intrigue the recruiter and you leave it there. Your resume has to contain points which make the recruiter curious to know more about you and call you for an interview to ask you, I read this and I want to know more about that, right? That is your job. And that's the reason, if you do this, putting your resume in one page, if you're a fresher, is super easy. And if you come with, let's say, even like 3 to 4 years of experience, putting it into 2 pages is not at all an unachievable task. You can easily do it. So that's how you form your bullet points. Also, any kind of key accomplishments or pivotal roles that you've had in terms of leadership. Let's say you were a sales and marketing intern, and because of your exceptional performance, you got promoted to a campus manager. That's a pivotal point in that internship. That is something you can highlight here. And always make sure your current role or your current internship has got the maximum number of explanatory bullet points as opposed to your previous roles, because anybody or any recruiter would be interested in knowing more about your current role, right, or your most recent role than the previous ones. So I've just given examples of 3 more companies, considering you have 3 companies you worked across. The next section is called leadership or projects. Now, leadership only applies to people with over 10 years of experience. If you come with under 10 years of experience, your next section could be projects, where you highlight on different projects that you worked on in teams or you worked on them individually during your academic course, whatever it is that you're pursuing, right? So we build certain projects, right? Whether it's with the team or individually, you can highlight what you did in that project, what was the aim of the project, what kind of software, tools, methodologies, research tactics, whatever it was that you used to achieve the aim of the project, and ultimately what was the final conclusion, because every project has got an end goal that you want to meet. As a working professionals also, your clients will have certain end goals that they want to meet. So how did you achieve that for your clients? Again, if you can bring in data, nothing like it. If you can bring in numbers to show your achievements or quantify them, that's the best scenario. Let's go to skills. Now, essentially, everyone possesses technical skills and management skills, and that is what you can divide them into. All of your softwares, tools, technologies, programming languages, etc., comes under your skills. Anything on the side of critical thinking, problem solving, analytical reasoning, project management, time management, communication skills, interpersonal skills, all of these come under your managerial skills, right? Languages can also be highlighted here to show your diverse profile and to show how diverse you are as a person. Whatever languages you are comfortable in or fluent in can be mentioned here. It could be local languages, could be foreign languages. You can always highlight them. Certifications and trainings is an optional section. I always recommend everybody to only include it in case you have got proper certifications from good institutions which have left an impact. Because every other random course done from Coursera or Udemy today does not leave an impact, because every other person is doing it and it's become saturated. As long as you actually worked on it, after doing the course you built a project of your own, or after doing the course you honed on the skills and you landed an internship, or after doing the course you started something of your own. If you've actually applied the learnings from the course into real life, and it's not just theory oriented, then add those certifications or trainings, right? That is what I will always recommend. Education is a very self-explanatory section. Your education in terms of your undergraduate degree, postgraduate degree, 12th, 10th, your marks, your CGPA, or the major you were doing, or the subject you were specializing in, and your duration can be mentioned. As you can see, the personal information has got a separate section here. You've got your city and your country mentioned, not your entire address. Never give your full address. No one wants to know that. Your phone number, your email address, your LinkedIn profile link is very important, but only add it if your profile is updated, right? Don't give them a shocker by having a profile which is not at all updated and is not in sync with what you've mentioned in the resume. If you're applying for very technical roles, have a GitHub repository link or your LinkedIn profile links on your coding profile links on different coding platforms like a HackerRank, a HackerEarth, Lead Code, CodeChef. You've got different platforms on which you code, right? And you get your stars. So that increases your credibility. You could add those. You have your own blog on Medium, you can add the link to that. You have your own YouTube channel, you could add a link to that. You have your own personal website, you could add a link to that. Whatever helps you stand out a bit and get more context to your profile. Achievements, as the name suggests, you can also name them as extracurricular. You can name it extracurricular or achievements. Anything and everything that you've done back in college in terms of taking part in conferences, attending hackathons, publishing some research papers, or let's say being the placement committee member of your college, or even being a part of club chapters and having certain authoritative roles, or as an employee getting some awards from your company. Anything and everything that you've achieved outside of just the technical work that you do as a student or as a working professional can be included here. Now, this is about a 1.5 page because I've given so many points for people to understand how to form these bullet points, and I've got additional sections as well. If you come with, if you're a fresher, you can easily put this in 1 page, and if not, also 1.5 page to 2 pages max, as I told you. There is no way that your resume needs to go beyond 2 pages, and I hope that this template helps you get an understanding of how you need to actually build ATS compliant resumes. Now, on that note, I'd like to quickly move towards video resumes, and I'd like to help you understand how you can build video resumes, currently, given the scenario we are in. So, what is a video resume? We all have spoken about it. It's an unconventional type of resume. Video resume really helps you stand out from the crowd because you're obviously talking to the recruiter indirectly in front of a screen where he cannot just judge you based on what a piece of paper tells him or her, but they can judge you based on your personality, based on your communication skills, based on your confidence, your body language, your body posture, and your personality as a whole. Also, because a video resume gives you the scope to talk about things you cannot generally talk about just in a resume, right? Probably you can't really talk about your interests or hobbies. A resume will never have a section about your interests or hobbies. You talk about it when you're introducing yourself in an interview, or you send across a video resume, or a passion project of yours, or something that you're doing. All of this can be talked about in a video resume, and that's where you can stand out. You can also talk about why you're applying to that job role, why this company, etc., which you don't get to talk about in your resume. So let's understand a few things to consider when you're making a video resume. The first thing is that you need to dress professionally, right? Whenever you're building a video resume, always dress professionally, either in Western formals or Indian formals. Western formals more preferably, especially for the male members. Females can obviously be dressed in Indian formals as well, but Western formals are preferred. Don't go to business casuals as well. Just stick to formals. Use an appropriate background, something like a plain wall against which you can sit and record your video, which is not very distracting, not very bright in color. Keep it very short. Your video resume, even though it's more interactive, at the end of the day, recruiters are short on time. It should be ranging between 30 to 90 seconds and not longer than that. And that is within the time, that is the time frame within which you need to kind of highlight whatever it is that you want to. Your smartphones, whether it's an Android phone or an iOS, is more than enough to record your video resumes. You don't need like a technical proper setup or a DSLR or a professional camera to shoot your video resumes. Not at all. You just need a very, very appropriate background. You need to be dressed professionally and obviously be in a place where you're not surrounded by people, and it's not noisy, right, in the background. It's just that you're able to peacefully record your video resume. Prepare a pitch or a script for your resume, which is a video resume, because you need to be very sure of how you're going to start out, what your body is going to look like, how you're going to conclude everything. So form like a script wherein you begin with a very brief introduction about yourself, your academic background, your areas of interest, your hobbies, things that you're passionate about because you couldn't talk about them in the resume. Then slightly move towards your qualifications in terms of your areas of interest technically, what skills you have built on by doing certain internships, attending certain courses, taking part in certain trainings, or taking up certain internships. What kind of internships have you done, how you've contributed to those organizations, and what do you intend to do in the future? What kind of a domain or space do you want to get into? And then you talk a little more about the company. Why are you applying to this job role? Why are you applying to this job role in this company? And what would you bring to the table? You talk about what personalized impact would you create, right? How would you be an asset to the organization? Because you don't get to talk about that in your paper resume. Talk about things that you were not able to talk about in your resume. Don't repeat things from your resume in your video resume. Use visual aids to or use editing tools to supplement your speech. This is only applicable when again you're applying for a very, very creative role. wherein you could actually, show certain work samples of your work also. Let's say you're applying for a graphic designing role somewhere. You could show some of your work samples from your profile. You could show some of the videos you've edited as a video editor. If you're a content writer, you could display some of your articles. These are creative roles where you can actually use visual aids, or you can use a slide deck of sorts also, which you would have made, like I've made one. And some part of it, half of the screen could be occupied by you speaking, half of the screen could be occupied by the work you're showing. You can get as creative and crazy as possible, but for your general corporate roles that you apply to, especially in India today, most of the companies don't accept a video resume so far, but I'm sure they will be getting that option very soon, because portals like imjobs.com and naukri.com and monster.com have already started using that option. Today, if you go there and you create a profile, you don't just have to upload a resume, they also ask you to upload a 30-second short resume. So the changes coming in, it will kick in very soon into the corporates as well.